So the Elven Ffayrie beings have often been described as peculiarly restless. There is certainly a display of this in their nomadic lifestyle, and that runs deep in their genetic memory of being on the move for thousands of years. Be assured that the Seelie she-court of the ancient Danubian race does not constantly shift their living circumstances because of some dissatisfaction. On the contrary, the regular movement of the court is mainly for traditional purposes. For example, it's always been done that way. And partly to feel normal as part of this underlying compulsion, for lack of finer terminology. While it's not necessarily the case for the solitary creatures of Elven Ffayrie, the Danubian she will relocate to a new dwelling place at the beginning of each quarter. These times of movement were marked by ceremonial observations of the four albans, which is to say the equinoxes and the solstices of the year. It may be that the continuation of the ceremonial observances by the agricultural folk was, for the purposes of the Elven Ffayrie, nomadic triggers to indicate movement, kind of like migratory cues for birds. The dwellings of the Elven Ffayrie are constructed in a manner unlike that of humans. The Elven style is natural. It is set into the land, built in harmony with the energies of the land, and not apart from it. Elves will come to a large tree and say, I could live in this. Humans will come by and say, I could cut this down and make a home to live in. The homes of woodland animals do not disrupt nature, and yet humans feel they can be an exception without even trying to be a guest in the forest. The accounts of Robert Kirk, the she resided at the time in the Fairy Mound, the hill or how, in describing the space-time of the Elven Fairy land or otherworld, Kirk found that in truth the otherworld was far too vast to be contained within a single hill. Interestingly, many of these hollowed hills are ancient burial sites of Elven Ffayrie ancestors of the surface world. The Tuatha Dianu and royal bloodlines of the Fae would preserve their ancestors kind of in this manner, in which we see near the Egyptian pyramids. It should be clarified, though, that the pyramids themselves were not tombs. The tombs were usually around the pyramids. Keep hitting the computer. Pyramids, tombs, where were we? So most Elven Ffayrie dwellings are natural and thus kind of temporary because of their frequent migration, and the fact that they spend little time actually at their home. When we speak of the nomadic life of the trooping fairy of the Seelie she-court, we're not including even all the solitary and sylvan folk who do not participate in these raids. They are significant because these are the best times for the Elvish wizard to actually see the movement of otherworld beings from the surface world. Be warned, though, that the Unseelie court does not share in the Seelie's celebration and are like the solitaries when it comes to these raids. The solitaries and sylvan folk represent the more earthy beings that give rise to impressions of like dressings in leaves and wearing acorns for hats and things like that. Because the she-courts of the High Elves really do kind of dress in grand attire at times. So in making references now then to the physical world of humans as opposed to another world, we have terms like Middle Earth, Mid-Branch, Middle World. These all imply like a third-dimensional plane. Each point in Middle Earth space has a center called, or we could just call the middle, in which this like ethereal recursive spiral of space-time ascends and descends, coiling into the upper and lower frequencies, or dimensions, if you will, ultimately connecting and unifying all things, but kind of at a different level. So make no mistake to think of the spiral-like multiverse in terms of just absolute upper and lower worlds. We use this terminology as only an abstract differentiation to describe the effect or relationship one plane or level of existence has with another. If indeed this universe or multiverse is infinite, then there would be infinite or smaller, lower, upper, larger levels of existence, but it probably there's many suggestions to suggest that it's recursive, that it feeds into itself and expands out from itself. The lands below, as Kirk experienced them, Robert Kirk, possessed its own moon, its own stars, and even a sun. He explained that by appearance they seemed more vividly real than even those of what you and I at this point might call the physical world. Now, while there is a separation between the middle world and the other world, this idea of the Faerieland beings being some kind of subterranean or underground is not really clearly displayed in any of Kirk's experiences or the lore of the others, except for the idea of the portals and entrances. While some fairy beings do live in caves and holes, it's not enough to make the generalization about all Elven Ffayrie. Now, specific natural conditions make thresholds between worlds possible or even more accessible. They must be conditions that will allow for a significant amount of interdimensional activity. While there are many kinds of thresholds, those which occur regularly each year are known as the four albans, interpreted literally as the four lights, or more poetically, the four torches. Note that in calling them the albans, the use of the word alb is a prefix that is very much connected to the elves. Elvish wizards also believe that the best time to see the Fae beings from the surface world begins, from our perspective, begins between Beltane, more appropriately May's Eve, April 30th, through to midsummer, so essentially the months of May and June. A powerful time for working between worlds from our side. The best time, according to folklore, though, in midsummer fairy raids seems to be what you have Shakespeare's play and things like that. So the midsummer time seems to be very common. It occurs 6 weeks after the setting of the Pleiades at Beltane, when these conditions are second best at Samhain or Halloween, when the Pleiades rise. Pleiades. But Samhain is not one of the four albums, which leads some to speculate which of the 8 Alderons or festivals actually trigger fairy movement. So, if we accept that the highest point is at midsummer, then perhaps it is the solstices and equinoxes of Beltane, and perhaps those. So, things to consider.